Hi.
Hi, my name's Matty. This is my presentation of steps 1, 2 and 3. So we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. The disease of addiction means to me that I suffer with a threefold illness that affects me mentally, spiritually and physically. So it can manifest in any way. You know, I could be, if I start to like something, you know, it could come out in, I could start to obsess about something, so it could be money, cars, clothes, females, anything like that. To the point where, you know, I am totally obsessed about it and I can't stop. Denial being that I would tell myself, you know, I would use just for one night, and I'd be able to stop, you know. I didn't care, you know, who I hurt, who I trod on, you know, what I did to get the money. I would do anything basically. But I always tell myself I would stop, you know, this would be the last night, I'll never do it again. I could never stop. Powerless over my addiction. So I knew that I would, you know, I'd wake up and as soon as I took that first drug, I was totally powerless over it. I would look for ways to find money, you know, I would go and nag my mum, you know, and she would argue with me, why can't you just stop, you know, why do you keep nagging me for money, why do you keep coming here all the time, you know, she'd be crying her eyes out. You know, I've had my daughter on the phone and my kids on the phone saying, Dad, why can't you stop? And I'm just totally powerless over the addiction. Hitting rock bottom, you know, I've been at this place a few times. You know, I've been suicidal. You know, I've woke up in hospitals where it's just got to the point where I didn't know there was a solution. You know, I was isolated in my flat. You know, just me and the dog. I didn't like being around no one. I didn't like myself. But I didn't know that there was a way out. I didn't know there was a solution. So hitting rock bottom. I've been in and out of hospital. You know, with not knowing what to do. Unmanageability. So inner unmanageability. So sat at home, you know, I didn't like sitting with myself, my thoughts, my feelings, you know, my anxiety go through roof like it is now. You know, I was just totally unmanageable. So rather than trying to deal with, you know, my thoughts and what I wanted to do, I just go use. Couldn't sit with myself at all. I just needed to use drugs. I could not be straight-headed. Just, you know, it just wouldn't work. Outer. So I would make appointments, you know, many times I've made appointments for dentists, couldn't keep the dentist. You know, for work I'd be late to work, I'd be late on site. Yeah, you know, things were just unreal really. Spiritual principles. Honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, humility and acceptance. Step 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So insanity for me would be, you know, I remember one night I'd left £20 in the bank and I was getting ready. I thought, yeah, I'll go score. You know, I've got 20 quid in the bank. So I get to the bank and realise that it was a bank holiday. And, you know, I got a fortnight's money there. And I was thinking, fucking hell, I thought I had it made. I thought, yeah, so I've got enough to get through now. Not knowing that I would just blow the fucking lot. Not be able to buy food next week, not be able to pay my rent, you know, not be able to make buy my dog food, anything like that. Power greater. I now know power greater to me is Alicia House. You know, when I surrendered to Alicia House, my peers, you know, I know that I can, if I wake up one morning, I've got bad thoughts or, you know, I need to share my feelings, I'll get around my peers. Also NA, the NA programme and the NA rooms, power greater than me. Restoration to sanity. Since being in Alicia House and doing the work, you know, I know it's only a process, but I'm sort of being, you know, restored to sanity. Again, you know, if I have insane thoughts, I want to leave, I want to go using, you know, I know that I can get around around my peers, and you know, take the advice on board, and slowly be restored to sanity. Spiritual principles were open-mindedness, willingness, faith, trust, and humility. Step 3. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Making a decision. Now, I remember being in hospital back in the last year. I remember speaking to my brother, and you know, he said that I might be able to get some help through a treatment centre. So I made the decision that day, you know, that I was going to come here, surrender to Alicia House, you know, and make a conscious effort on my recovery. You know, there's no way I could have gone on the way I was. I was suicidal, and I just didn't want to live, basically. Self-will. I've been running on self-will all my life, you know, and it's gotten me nowhere, clearly. I would, you know, it's even kept me out of, again, you know, my brother has been around the fellowship a long time, told me that there was a solution, but I would, you know, myself, well, I know best, you know, fucking would not allow me to go into them rooms, you know, and that happened for loads of years, obviously. Yeah, God of my understanding. God of my understanding is the church, you know, the church community and Jesus. You know, I wake up every morning, and again, you know, I pray, get on my knees and I pray, and I just ask for guidance, basically, strength, courage, you know, and peace of mind, you know, to be able to continue in my recovery. It's been a big part for me because, look, going back through the work, you know, doing the work, I feel a lot of guilt and shame, you know, for the stuff that I've done, the things that I've done to people, and, you know, the experiences I've put them through. You know, none of them deserve that, but I now know I don't have to carry that. You know, I can hand that over on the morning, and it's been a massive help to me. I go to church twice a week, and my faith just keeps growing stronger and stronger as I go on. Spiritual principles will be surrender and willingness. I know that's short, but that's my presentation.